Hi, I'm Shelton. I'd like to show you a few slides from a presentation I made in Seoul, South Korea a couple years ago. It was at a time when North Korea was showing some signs of being more cooperative with the West. And the first slide talks about being only a few kilometers away from the frontier where their artillery pieces pointed at Seoul. But um, that's why it starts off that way. The idea was that to use this field of scientometrics to encourage collaborations between North Korean scientists and scientists elsewhere. Um, that's the subject of this particular conference. It's called Collnet for collaborative research. So take a look. Um, we were a little too optimistic about what the new leader, Kim Jong-un, might do to open up his country at the time. Turns out that he kind of moved in the opposite direction. Thank you. This is the paper that we presented in Seoul, South Korea at the Collnet conference with my colleague Grant Lewison from Great Britain. He's the real bibliometric expert. So this is a sort of a scientometric analysis of the opportunities for collaboration in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, that is North Korea. This is the outline of the talk. Just exactly geographically, where is North Korea and what is happening there that causes us to be interested in it? What is its perspective from the scientometrics point of view? And what can scientometrics do to help bring North Korea into better alignment with the rest of the world? This is a map of the region. If you look closely, you'll see that North Korea is titled Democratic People's Republic of Korea, but South Korea, just to the south of it, is merely called Korea. And so there is a little bit of a problem with nomenclature here. Um, they're bordered by China to their west and Russia to their north. You may have seen this nighttime satellite photograph of the region. These show the lights. Japan is highly industrialized, and so you see lots of lights on in the various islands of Japan. And if you look closely, you'll see lots of lights on in South Korea, that peninsula over to the left of the picture, and a big blob of light in Seoul, the capital. But if you look just to the north of that, Seoul is right on the border with North Korea, you see that there's virtually no lights on at night in North Korea. So that measure of industrialization shows a big difference between North and South Korea. Here's a one-slide introduction to North Korea. As you see from the troops there, their army is quite powerful. It's one of the largest armies in the world. They have nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles. However, if you go there and keep your eyes open, you see that North Korea is really a very poor country. And in fact, famine is a constant threat. People are very thin there, except members of the Communist Party, the ruling hierarchy, because they get plenty to eat, and so they're quite chubby. Politically, it's a police state with a cult of personality. It's almost like a time machine going back to Stalin's Soviet Union or Mao's People's Republic of China. Well, there's reason for optimism, though. Um, the progress of the PRC, China, under Mao Zedong, shows how quickly it could change. At the time of this talk, they had just gotten a new leader, a young man named Kim Jong-un, and initially he showed some signs of liberalizing the the country, and our field of scientometrics showed some potential progress with increased numbers of scientific papers being published. So Grant and I looked at North Korea from a scientometrics perspective, and the first thing that you run into is that um, editors often mischaracterize papers from North Korea. They are so rare compared to papers from other parts of the country, particularly South Korea, that often they're allocated to other places. This record here on the slide shows a paper being credited to Pyongyang, South Korea. Well, Pyongyang, of course, is the capital of not South, but rather North Korea. In fact, it's the main city of North Korea, and that's where most of the universities and research institutes are that do publishing. So we constructed a filter to look for papers from Pyongyang, and that was much more accurate than trying to find them from North Korea. This is another database, Scopus. It also shows rapid growth. The previous one was from the more traditional Web of Science. This chart shows what are the subjects of those papers. They show that North Korea is concentrating on the physical sciences. Not surprisingly, their most visible technologies are nuclear weapons and rockets. They actually collaborate with some other countries, most notably China for obvious reasons. China's North Korea's strongest ally. They also have done some collaborations with Germany and Australia, Japan, and even the United States. By far the most interesting collaboration, though, is the new Pyongyang University of Science and Technology, PUST, founded by Dr. Kim, the gentleman on the left, who was a Korean American who made a small fortune in retail business in the United States. And he, like many Koreans, he's a devout Christian. So he first founded a university for Koreans in northeastern China, and that proved to be a success. And so he decided he would go to the heart of the matter and try to reach out to the people in North Korea. And so he went there to Pyongyang and discussed with the North Korean government the possibility of his founding a science university in their capital. And so the first thing they did was to throw him in jail and charge him with espionage and threaten to execute him. But they soon came around to this idea. In fact, I think that the North Korean leaders realized that this PUST could be a great resource for educating their children and teaching them state-of-the-art technology. So they made a complete turnaround and started supporting this university by giving Kim some very valuable land in the suburbs of Pyongyang and helping him construct some buildings there. The pictures on the right kind of gives you an idea how this works. The students are all men. They start off by going to school at traditional North Korean universities for a couple of years, and then they transfer to PUST. They are closely watched. Everybody is closely watched, like everybody in North Korea. They march to class singing patriotic songs, a little different from what you might see in the West. I was invited to go there to their first international conference in 2011, and that is the cover of the conference proceedings, which shows the handsome campus of PUST. Finally, what could the scientometrics community do, or scientists in general? Well, it would be constructive if we could build bridges to scientists in North Korea. So collaboration on research projects and papers is a good way to do that. Um, it's not so easy to do, but um, scientists might get a introduction through a mutual acquaintance, maybe somebody in China. When I made this slide a few years ago, in the second bullet, I suggested that you go to North Korea as a tourist by just buying a tour. But things have changed. After the death of Oscar Warmbier, the U.S. government cut off visas to North Korea so that you can't go there if you're an American. Probably not a good idea anyway. Number three there, you can contribute to charities that help the poor people of North Korea, which is definitely a worthwhile thing to do. These are people who are on the verge of starvation and abused by totalitarian governments, so this is certainly a worthy cause. The fourth one there is I suggested that you might take your sabbatical at PUST. That's where their professors come from. Most of them are kind of like missionaries. They're really motivated by religious ideals, although you're not allowed to say anything religious or do anything religious when you're in North Korea. God forbid you should leave a Bible behind. And also, there's been a couple of instances in the last couple of years that where professors at PUST have been arrested by the North Koreans, and it took Secretary of State Pompeo to spring them as a part of Mr. Trump's opening to Kim Jong-un. So I suggest that you wait to go to North Korea. Personally, I was mighty glad to get out of there alive, and I have no plans to go back. Thanks for listening.